It is 4 o'clock on November 8th, 2021. I'm going to call to order the study session for the Ottawa City Commission. We are going to begin every meeting as we have for as long as I've been here, to offer the public an opportunity to visit with us. It appears as though we may have individuals who are looking for public comment. Might want to point out that we are, if your public comment is regarding an item that's on the agenda, we'll ask you to make your public comment during that time. If not, we are certainly willing to accept public comment right now that is an item that's not on the agenda. Do we have individuals? No?
None.
Okay, great. Well, anyone is always welcome, or we invite anyone to please join us to visit with us in our area of public comment. So that does move us on to items to be placed on the regular City Commission agenda, which include the minutes from November 1st and the minutes from November 3rd. Commissioners, have you had an opportunity to review those?
Yes, looks good.
Is it consensus to place those on the agenda?
Yes. Yes.
We shall do so. Next, that moves us on to proclamation recognizing Small Business Saturday on November 27th, 2021. Commissioners, did you have a chance to visit this?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, great.
good.
And you're good with that?
Yes.
It appears as though we are. All right, moving on down the agenda. Items for presentation and discussion. Discussion of the planned unit development for Kansas Cottages located at 1742 South Elm. And I believe Mrs. Lee and Mr. Finch will be addressing these matters, which will include the ordinance and the protest petition, which are before us today in our packet. So, Mrs. Lee, Mr. Finch, who will go first today?
I can go, or I'm happy to let City Attorney Finch go first.
I'm happy to start, Wendy, based on your connection, and then if you want to jump in and clean up anything I get wrong, we can do it that way. So, Commissioners, this item comes before you on a 4-to-1 vote for recommendation of approval by the Planning Commission. I will not get too deep in the specifics of the proposal. We do have the Chair of the Planning Commission here, Chairman Lantis, who can speak to this. I'll basically talk about procedure for you. The Planning Commission received an application for a PUD, a Planned Unit Development Designation. That is essentially an overlay of an existing zoning classification. For procedural purposes, it's treated as a rezoning application, and the public hearing is called in the same manner. Notice is given in the same manner. 20 days have to elapse between the giving of that notice and the scheduling of the public hearing, and then the Planning Commission takes up the matter at its meeting. It issues findings similar to what it would in a rezone, which you've seen before. The city has, I think, 12 factors that it asked the Planning Commission to review, and they did that at their meeting. They had 2 meetings on this issue. They continued the meeting and took it up again about a week later. They did issue their findings, including the staff findings for recommending approval. I don't think there were any material changes to any of the findings that the Planning Commission passed on to you. In the interim, a protest petition was received. It is legally sufficient, meaning that 20% or more of the owners of surrounding property have signed on to that protest petition. That changes your options. And recall that in any rezoning that comes before you, the City Commission, or what the statute refers to as a governing body, has 3 options. You can approve by a simple majority vote the change that is presented to you. You can reject and override the Planning Commission's recommendation, whether for or against, by a 2/3 majority vote. Or you can send it back to the Planning Commission with a recommendation that further review be done on some certain factor, and we would always recommend that you'd be very specific about, we think you didn't consider this fully, or we'd like you to give more thought to this. A protest petition changes that calculus. You still have the same 3 options, but essentially every option that you might choose requires that supermajority vote. In your case, 4 out of 5 would need to vote either to accept the Planning Commission's recommendations and move this project forward, to reject the Planning Commission's recommendation and deny the PUD on this property, or to send it back to the Planning Commission for more input. So you do have a protest petition, so you're now looking for 4 out of 5 to take action. If you can't reach a majority, then the project is obviously stopped because that is essentially treated as a no vote if you can't get to 4 out of 5.
Excuse me just a second,
Yeah.
just a point of clarification, since we only have 4 commissioners, does those numbers change then? 4 out of 5 at 3 out of 4? or
They
is
do
it-
not. You still have 5 commissioners, 5 commission seats. And so my recommendation to you will be, and we can talk about this later in the meeting, you now have had an intervening election and you have someone who would be taking office in January. They happen to be someone who has experience. My recommendation would be that you consider seating them prior to taking action on this.
Okay.
So while the statutes are very clear about the process that the Planning Commission follows, and they are clear on the factors that you all need to consider, you do not have the same strictures in terms of the law. You do not have to wait 20 days. You do not have to have a public hearing. You are, as the city manager said earlier, you're kind of like an appellate court. The district court has given you the record. You have all the pros and cons, the people who were for and against. You have the Planning Commission's findings. You have the staff findings. And you are in a position to kind of review that and make a determination. Most all of that information is in your packet today, by the way, that you have before you. So you do not have to go through a public hearing. It has been the custom in the city of Ottawa when it is a project that has a lot of interest attached to it, that you do take public comment at some point. And my recommendation to you would be that you schedule a time to do that, and that then you brief with Ms. Lee and I your options, and then go forward with taking a motion on and vote on one of the 3 options, whatever it is you all think is in the best interest of the city. I will tell you that these types of issues, when there is a lot of interest, they don't age well. They're not like wine or cheese. The sooner you deal with them, usually the better. Everyone living in limbo as to whether they can proceed with their project or whether they feel that their neighborhood will change. The longer that goes on, the less happy folks tend to be. So I would tell you there is value in getting to the issue sooner rather than later. I will also tell you that based on your calendar between now and the end of the year, your December is pretty packed. So if you want to have public input, I would suggest doing it sometime in the month of November. And then you can take action at that meeting because you're not required to give any sort of time period under the law. You do have 2 things you have to do, though. You have to act lawfully, and that is you have to follow the proper process. In this case, that's taking the vote, whichever way you decide to go, honoring the protest petition, et cetera. The Planning Commission does most of that side of it. The second piece is that you have to act reasonably. Remember that if someone is aggrieved by your decision, they go to the district court and they sue the city, and the ultimate standard that the court has to apply, they can't substitute their judgment for yours. They have to presume that what you've done is reasonable, but the ultimate test there is, did you in fact give due consideration to all of the proper factors? And those 12 factors that the Planning Commission looked at and issued findings, those mirror the factors that courts have set forth in case law in the state of Kansas. So if your inquiry is kind of confined to those factors, you're usually in pretty safe ground in terms of, are you acting reasonably when you make your decision? So those are the things I'll just tell you about process and kind of by way of background, and then I'll open it up for, I think Ms. Lee might want to talk to you a little bit about the actual application itself, or defer to Chairman Lantis, and then I'll take any questions you have.
Mrs. Lee?
Yes, Mayor. As always, our city attorney is very succinct and on target. I couldn't have said it even half as well. So I too would agree that the sooner you consider whether you want to have a special meeting or have this be the full focus of a meeting for public comment, the better. While I know that today some public comments in writing were received, the one thing I would add is that when the Planning Commission held their first meeting, they did close the public hearing, and so when they came back for their second meeting, they elected to consider that their total record. After their first meeting and the hearing was closed, we did receive letters, both pro and con, regarding the project, but they weren't sent to the Planning Commissioners. Because they weren't a part of that record, they also have not been sent to you. So if we begin to consider comments received today or comments at a meeting, I would certainly feel that it would be our obligation to provide those other letters to you as well, because that's the more full and complete record if we're going to consider things outside of what was at the public hearing and outside of what the Planning Commission had available to them at the time they made their recommendation. I'm happy to go through, this is a very extensive project. There's an abundance of material, including all of the minutes, the draft minutes. But I also recognize that you're short a commissioner today and you may want to consider what to do with that other seat. So I don't know if you really want me to go through the whole history here or whether you want to have a little discussion and then let me know when you want to do that.
Commissioners, I think at this point, we really want to focus on, instead of diving deep into the details on whether or not how we're going to move, we need to decide, first of all, do we want to hear this? And if so, when would you like to hear it? I would propose that we hear and have a kind of a full briefing on this at our meeting on the 17th, which is, 9 days from today, but is our meeting at 10 a.m. And have an opportunity to have Mrs. Lee make her presentation at the time and go through all of that. We also do have the opportunity to take public comment at that time or at whatever period we choose to hear it, or not hear it, but whether or not we want to take some public comment. What are the thoughts of commissioners on this item?
I don't think we necessarily need to hear it today. I think one of the things we probably should think about is filling the seat with Ms. Graves, as I know she's here, but for the public to know her setting up here.
We're actually going to discuss that further on in the agenda.
And I think at this point, we'd just be spinning our wheels with being told about this project before she's actually sitting here. And we don't even know if, I know Tom's available or not, so, it'd be nice to know if Tom was.
We anticipate that he will be at the 17th meeting. He indicates that he will be here at our 17th meeting.
And then my only other concern is, I know I read some of the public comments today, and a lot of them made note of an evening meeting, and we don't have one left in this month, unfortunately. And I know I agree with you, with our city attorney, that we probably you need to get that in this month because of our schedule next month. So
our evening meeting on December 1st contains the properties for condemnation, and that is generally a lengthy meeting, and I recognize that individuals would like to have an evening meeting, but I'm sure that they would not like an evening meeting that goes until 10 p.m. We can't control the timing there. Those hearings have already been called for December 1st, and they must be held at that time. So the soonest that we can get to it would be the 17th meeting. Are there thoughts on hearing the information on the 17th?
Well, I'll be absent that day myself, but could we call a special meeting like on the, 22nd, 23rd, some other day, some evening, to hear these comments?
Well, we have to give a 20-day notice to post a public hearing, do we don't?
No.
Okay.
No. Commissioner Crowley, the Planning Commission has to give 20 days, which they did, and
Okay.
they conducted the public hearing. Your options would be to, you have a commissioner who will be absent, and obviously when you need 4 out of 5 to do anything, it's nice to have a full board here. Commissioner Skidmore, will you be available that evening of the 17th?
Yes.
That is an option. You just make the 17th an evening meeting, and just flip it from 10 a.m. to sometime in the evening. Or a special meeting can be called for any day that you all choose. I don't know how many of the folks who mentioned the evening meeting, Commissioner Crowley, were at the Planning Commission meeting. I didn't have a chance to kind of check those. But this would be a second bite at the apple for many if you don't end up doing an evening meeting, and there's no requirement that it be an evening meeting. If you want it to be, it's as simple as you all finding the night that works and making that happen as well. So you have both options.
I guess another question on top of that would be that do we need to seat our 5th commissioner before we have this meeting?
I
have all
believe that
five.
that is probably going to be a definite possibility.
Okay. And
Yes.
so I guess I'm saying, well, should we decide that date before we decide a date for our public comments?
Certainly. Let's do that. So I spoke with newly elected or recently elected Commissioner Graves, and she is available to serve and is available, beginning next week. And she's actually in the audience today, and I appreciate her being here today. So she's available as early as next week to do that. So, yeah, that's not a problem if that's what we should choose to do.
And we can
on
do that at a
C.
study session, I guess. We've
Mhm.
done that before.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't think having a full commission is going to necessarily be a barrier for us. I recognize you're going to be unable to join us on the 17th, and we can certainly move it to the evening, or we can have it on the 22nd. I mean, I unfortunately, that's the week of Thanksgiving, and I'm
Yeah.
gone after that.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that 17th evening meeting would work fine with me. I just can't get out of that morning meeting I've got.
Commissioner Crowley?
I'm available for the evening meeting.
Emily?
Good?
And we don't know about Commissioner Wygant. It's the only thing, and so that puts us in the same space about
Sure.
not knowing
Yeah.
where we're at. And I don't believe Commissioner Wygand will be available to even have that conversation for several days. How would you like to proceed knowing that information? I know he's available during the day. He had indicated to us, but I recognize what you're saying.
Yeah.
So we could do the 17th, the 22nd, 29th.
Well, we can go with the Plan A and the Plan B. See how soon can we communicate with Tom, you say? Would it
I'm
be-
not sure that, it may be a few days before we can actually get with him,
Okay.
yes.
What dates, Commissioners, what dates do you want to know if Commissioner Wygant is available?
Well, it appears as though there's some discussion about having it in the evening of the 17th, or possibly on the 22nd, which would be our regular study session.
The evening of the 27th or just a regular
17th,
time?
17th. 27th is on a Saturday. You can show up, but I'm pretty
No,
sure
no,
none of the rest of us will.
Sorry about my
Sorry.
speech impediment there. 22nd, is the 22nd the regular time?
22nd is the plan, or is the
Study
plan,
session?
yeah, study session.
Okay.
Pardon me. We can certainly wait until next week to finalize that. There is not a requirement to do a huge public notice. The individuals who are listening may just want to be aware that the 17th is what we're looking at, possibly in the evening, and the 22nd is our backup plan at this point. Yes.
Madam Mayor, I would, with due respect, I would suggest you just set the date for when you're gonna receive public comment and take input. You may not vote that night if you don't have 5 commissioners. You may defer your vote to the study session on the 22nd. But if the point is to get public input, giving that notice now and letting everybody plan on being here at that time, even if Commissioner Wygand were not here, you could defer the vote until some future date, but you could at least let everyone come and say their piece. You get briefed on the issue, and then Commissioner Wygand can review the record or watch the video of the meeting.
So we certainly could have the hearing on the 17th, and Commissioner Skidmore could participate and hear the public comment at that time, if not, if we wanted to not change the date. I mean, what is the will of the commission on that particular topic?
You're suggesting switching the 17th from evening to morning to evening, just like I think that's the way we go. I mean, that way Commissioner Skidmore can be here, and that gives a week and a half for Tom to be available too, Commissioner Wygant.
Sure. That's fine with me, too.
All right, then we are going to tentatively move our meeting on the 17th to the evening. Would that be a starting time of 7 p.m.?
Yes.
Okay, and we will visit with Commissioner Wygant in the next several days, hopefully before the end of the week, and have some notice out to the rest of us on that. So, and Emily, can you pencil that in for the 17th at 7 p.m.? Great, thank you. I want to notify the public that we did receive several electronic letters today regarding this particular topic. We received letters from Brian Robertson, Clarice Dingle, Brad Matthews, and Mallory Hall. We are not going to read those. Those will become part of the public record. However, we will not read them verbatim. Is there anything else on this item to address? All right, then we will hear it on the 17th at our meeting date that has been tentatively moved to 7 p.m. That moves us on to the next item on the agenda, which is a bid proposal for 103 and 127 North Main. Mrs. Lee?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Again, this is Wendy Lee, Director of Community Development. You all had asked us to post a notice of possible sale of 103 and 127 North Elm. And we only received one bid. And personally, I was a little surprised because I had several people that were talking to me about building a structure there. So I don't know if they just had a problem getting their bid in or what have you, but we wanted to share that bid with you and then have discussion with you if you'd like about whether we should proceed or consider another bidding opportunity like we have on some of the others, or how you felt about it.
So, Commissioners, how would you like to proceed, seeing that we had one option come our way? I got to tell you, I'm willing to. I'd like to continue to keep that open.
Yeah.
For other options.
That sounds fine to me too. That's just the first offer that's been made, so maybe a little more time
I agree.
to see what we get.
So how would?
Commissioners, then I'll have myself repost that out with the deadline of say next Wednesday, and we'll let the few folks that were reaching out to us. We know at least one was sent to reach the clerk the day of the bid, and we can reach out to them to let them know, or we can go till the end of the month, which would be fine. There's no urgency here, and make sure there's plenty of advertisement and notice out there if you like.
I would much rather just go till the end of the month. I mean, it gets a little dicey after next week regarding around the Thanksgiving holiday, and I'd much rather, since there is no urgency.
Sounds fine, yeah.
Are we fine with
I agree.
making,
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
extending that to end of the month?
Yes.
We'll make that November 30th at 10 a.m. and we'll be back in touch on that item.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mrs. Lee. All right, this moves us on to, because we haven't had enough time to stop thinking about the budget, we appreciate Ms. Landis coming back to us with budget stuff. It feels like yesterday we were talking about the budget, Melanie, but thank you for coming back to review the budget amendments that we have for 2021.
Well, in all fairness, this is a different budget. This is this year's budget. So I just want to make sure you were all in the current time period. I do want to apologize for just getting the information to you today. If you do want more detail, we can get that to you over some of these. I try to give a general broad explanation in the memo, and I think for that reason I will, and especially for the public, I will kind of run through this by each fund that's in here, at least some brief comments. Just wanted to start by saying that a budget amendment is required when the anticipated expenditures for any one budgeted fund may exceed the originally adopted budgeted expenditure. Budget amendments are not intended to forecast fund carryover or adjust revenues except to indicate where increased revenues are being used to offset the anticipated expenditure. Budget amendments do not impact the mill levy rate and are approved as which were approved as part of the adopted budget. The important part of those comments are that what you have in the packet are not intended to be a financial forecast for each fund. So the revenues in there are not what we anticipate that they will be at the end of the year. They are, unless there was a specific revenue that came in that is being used, that was unanticipated, that is being used to offset the unanticipated expenditure, everything should have remained the same. So I don't want anyone to be concerned when they see the unencumbered balance at the bottom. We do not budget our fund reserves. We leave those unencumbered at the bottom of each fund budget. So those amounts will roll over in addition to any excess revenues or underspent expenditures for each one of these funds. So we are strictly looking at budgeted expenditures here. And so if we thought we were going to go over the expenses that were budgeted, that's what's been presented to you. And that's also why there's not an amendment for every single fund, only those that are listed here. In addition to, all of your department directors have participated in this process, so I appreciate their help with that. The hearing is proposed to be held on Wednesday, December 1st at the 7 p.m. commission meeting. Our request from staff is that the commission give us an approval this evening in order to go ahead and publish the notice as soon as possible in order to meet the notice requirements. That would mean that maybe not necessarily a vote, but at least an approval to move ahead with publication. And we could have delayed this till the second meeting in December, but wanted to make certain that we had the opportunity to get that public hearing done before the end of the year.
Commissioners, Mayor,
Yes,
if I may.
pardon me.
Richard Ninested, City Manager. And those of you who are veterans on the commission know that how we've handled this in the past is brought this to you and by consensus given approval to get this published. And this is more challenging because of the lack of, it's a better term, of flexibility in the publication schedule by the official newspaper.
Thank you. So if you would allow me to run through each of the funds, the amendment detail includes for the general fund budget amendment is reflective only of the increased carryover to 2021 due to the reimbursement of CARES and Spark funds in 2020 and the commission's approved purchase and alteration of a building which will be used largely for parks operations. The expenditure adjustments also reflect facility improvements to the police department and an offsetting decrease to the anticipated transfer in funds, which was used to fund those same facility improvements. In the debt service fund, in early 2021, the city issued general obligation bonds, which were issued 2021A, to refinance revolving loan funds for their utilities and to reissue debt at a lower interest rate. The annual payments were, in the past, being paid from an expense line item in each of the utility funds. But now that they're a general obligation bond, they're being paid from the debt service fund. So in order to make the October payments from the debt service fund, we transferred additional dollars in from each of those utilities to cover them. And we just needed to increase the total expenditure line item for the debt service fund related to those payments. In the auditorium fund, we experienced two unbudgeted changes for 2021. In February, the significant weather event caused a higher than normal gas utility bill, totaling over more than $30,000. Also, a new program has begun where the auditorium will collect ticket sales on behalf of small organizations that use the facility for their programming, which caused a related unbudgeted expenditure when returning those ticket dollars back to the organization. The changes reflected in the amended budget include a higher carryover balance, the additional ticket sale revenue, and the additional ticket sale expenditure. For the special highway fund, the expenditure budget did not reflect a full street rehab program budget. The amended budget reflects an increase of $105,000 in expenditures for the program, which is offset by an adjusted carryover balance, and unanticipated revenue from the federal funds exchange program. Additionally, the transfer to debt service reflects a minor change to match the actual debt service payment for 2021. In the airport fund, the budget amendment reflects two changes. The increase in fuel cost is partially offset by increased revenue for fuel sales, and additionally, the airport received reimbursement dollars from the CARES and Spark grant, which allowed facility improvements to be made in 2021. In the land bank was created in 2021, and a budget was accepted by the land bank trustees on June 21st, and then subsequently by the city commission. Since the new fund was not in existence when the 2021 budget document was approved last year, the creation of the fund is in the form of a budget amendment, which is also included in your packet. The electric fund, or electric utility budget amendment, reflects an unanticipated increase in the cost of purchased power and demand in the approximate amount of $2.7 million, a more accurate reflection of the current system network fees annual expenditure of nearly $95,000, and loan repayment for $537,305. Revenues shown to offset these expenditures include the actual fund balance carryover for this year, fuel adjustment revenue, and unanticipated loan proceeds in the amount of $1 million, just over $1 million. Additionally, each year, the library requests an annual appropriation amount from the city commission, and that's adopted as part of the official budget. During the budget year, there's a possibility that revenues from taxes, whether ad valorem or vehicle, will be received in excess of the budgeted amounts. Traditionally, the city has amended the annual budget in order to release those additional tax revenue dollars in December of each year. The 2021 budget included an expenditure amount of $44,365, which is more than what was requested by the library. While we will not be certain of the full tax revenue potential until the December distribution, which at that time will be vehicle taxes only, it is likely that the additional budgeted amounts will allow the authority to distribute the remaining revenue. Any revenue beyond the budgeted authority will roll to 2021 as a carryover balance, and the commission can consider release of those funds in a 2022 budget amendment. At this time, a budget amendment is not necessary for 2021. However, an additional comment would be, unless you think that we should go ahead and amend it to a higher amount so that we can release all of the funds should they come in above and beyond that $44,000. I believe that right now we've received somewhere in the range of $30,000. It should be noted that we have actually distributed a small portion over what their request was, which would be a portion of this. So while we're not in budget violation, we certainly had not come to you to ask for permission to do so. So we would look for some guidance on that item. Once the notice of public hearing has been published, the detailed document will be available at City Hall and on the city's website for citizens interested in reviewing the supporting detail, and all of your staff is available for questions related to the budget amendments.
Thank you for your presentation. I wonder if you may want to, I'm unclear on what it is you're looking for further guidance for the library's distribution.
So I believe that the amount that was budgeted will cover most all of the excess revenue that comes in. We know that as of today's date, there's about $30,000. We had budgeted an additional $44,000. That gives us authority up to $44,000 over what they requested. And traditionally, we give them everything that comes in for tax dollars each year. Last year, the December distribution was just over $18,000, so there might be a couple $1,000s that wouldn't be in there. Of course, we have no way of knowing exactly what that distribution would be in December. So I guess it would just be your comfort level on going ahead and releasing those dollars up to the budget authority amounts, and then anything that's remaining would carry over to next year. We would do a budget amendment next year and include it in our distribution back to them. So they wouldn't be missing anything. It's just a matter of timing.
So they could tap that extra money in January of next year if numbers come in.
If there is anything above and
Above
beyond
and
that
beyond.
44,000,
So,
yes.
okay. Well, I'm fine with releasing up to what the expenditure amount that we budgeted for.
And For the library, are
For
you
the library, yeah.
talking for all?
Just for the library.
Amendments? Oh,
I
okay.
think we're just talking about the library here, aren't we?
Yes. I
Yeah.
was just making sure that you weren't.
Yep. No,
Are there questions for Ms. Landis? Do you have capacity in this request to, is this something you want a motion to move today? Or are you okay with addressing this on the 17th officially?
I believe that the 17th actually puts us a couple of days behind the required 10-day publication notice for the first. It's not that it's 10 days out, it's that because of the requirements for the newspaper and how many days in advance it has to be given to them. So I believe it's either 1 or 2 days beyond what we need to actually publish it for the December 1st meeting. So I would say that if we could tackle it tonight, fine. If not,
You would simply like us to call the public hearing for December 1st.
that would be our first preference.
Mhm.
We could absolutely call it for the second meeting in December if you are all more comfortable with doing so.
Commissioners, how would you like to proceed on this matter?
Like we discussed earlier, I think the 1st is pretty full, so if we could wait till the 15th, that would be better.
I also wonder if the 15th may not be better just because it would give us a better picture of if we need to make any amendments for the library.
I agree.
Since it appears as though their last financial statement through the end of September was already 12,000 excess, and then you said that you're at 30, and
We won't have the county payment in time to do anything different for the 15th versus the 1st.
oh, okay.
Last year it came in the middle of December.
Well, how would you like to proceed on this one? Public hearing on the 1st or public hearing on the 15th?
I'd prefer the public hearing on the 15th.
Commissioner Skidmore?
I'm fine with that.
Okay. We will call a public hearing for amending the budget on Wednesday, December 15th at 10 a.m.
Would you all like to see this again then, or do you need any additional information before we publish?
I personally do not need to see anything again. Of course, there will just be copious amounts of information available for us on the 15th, which we will have a full commission at that time, so that would be good. Other commissioners, do you have thoughts?
I don't need to see any more. I think if I have any questions, I can, direct them towards you if need be.
Sure,
Or if something materially changes between now and then, of course, but this is fine.
absolutely. Okay,
All right.
thank you very much.
Appreciate it. All right, that moves us on to the next item on our agenda today, and I've got to go right all the way up there. That moves us on to talking about the Ottawa Municipal Airport, which Mr. Hafley will be addressing this matter today. Mr. Hafley?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. As you may recall, our airport manager resigned back in July. We did a lot of analysis as to whether we wanted to go back with an airport manager or see if we could find an FBO, a fixed-based operator. We did do interviews for an airport manager. However, during that process, we were presented with an option from one of the candidates to be an FBO, and we felt that that was a lot better avenue to pursue rather than an airport manager. And part of that is an airport manager is employed by the city, so he really can't offer any other services other than like flight instruction or airframe inspection or anything like that. He can't do that on city time. So having an FBO allows us to have more services at the airport, and while still having somebody manage the airport for us. So with city manager Richard Neinstedt's permission, I consulted with the individual, and he has set up an LLC. We've worked up this contract or this agreement that you have before you. I will say that this agreement is largely the same as what we had with the previous FBO. The major change is to 17E and F, and I'm going to hit F first. In 17F, the previous FBO paid for all of the utilities, but we reimbursed that FBO 55% of the electric bill. This agreement calls for the FBO being responsible for for all of the utilities. So now I'll go back up to 17E. 17E, the split on the hangar rents is the same for the main hangar and the North T hangars. It was 90-10 with the previous FBO. It's the same with this FBO. The 90-10 being 90%. The FBO will receive 90% of the hangar rent for the main hangar and the North T hangars, and the city will receive 10%. On the South T hangars, to help offset the cost so that we're not passing money back and forth every month, we've come up with an 85% split from the South T hangars, and the city will receive 85% of that rent. Now that extra, the 15% that we're proposing to give to this FBO is equal to the amount that we were spending on the 55% of the electric fund. So this essentially cuts down on money passing back and forth.
Questions, commissioners, regarding this, this lease?
Yeah, Mr. Hafley, on the South T hangars, did we borrow money to build those, and are we still paying on that? I don't remember if we incorporated that in maybe some other bond issue.
I don't remember for sure, and pardon me, Commissioner, I was fresh, brand new here when all that was taken care of. The hangars were already in the process of being built when I got here.
Okay.
City Manager Neinstead may want to
We did borrow money, and we're still paying on that, and I think our Director of Finance can perhaps give you a little bit more
I
information.
just want to make sure that 85% of the revenue will more than cover the debt service. That's the only question I have with that. We can find out that later if we need to.
Well, and this is the initial time that we've actually reviewed this particular
that's true.
FBO agreement.
That's true.
So
Right.
if, and we will have a full commission next
Yep.
week or
Yep.
darn near close.
Yep, that's right.
So we may want to hold it over. That would be my
Okay.
suggestion,
I think that's a good.
would
idea.
be to hold it over. Are there other things that you have questions for regarding, to Mr. Hafley regarding the FBO agreement?
Mr. Havely, you mentioned that the FBO can provide airframe inspection services for airplanes. For folks that aren't familiar with the airport, how important is that?
Providing additional services gets us more traffic to the airport. The more traffic we have at the airport helps us with our FAA funding.
And fuel sales and
Fuel
everything else
sales,
that goes along with it.
everything.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Does this FBO agreement have set office or set hours for the hangar to be open? Or pardon me, for the airport to be open?
Yes, it does, and it is in, trying to remember where it's at, but it's I can tell you, it's 8 to 4, Tuesday through Saturday.
Yeah, 15A.
There you go. Right there in front of me.
And so we had a previous FBO before the manager, and is this agreement pretty well parallel that agreement, or how different is it?
The change that I mentioned earlier is one change. The second change is the hours.
Okay.
We've been operating with an airport manager for the last 3 years, with our hours being Tuesday through Saturday, 8 to 4. The
Okay.
previous FBO, because we as a city couldn't pay one employee to work 7 days a week.
Yeah.
So we adjusted the hours based off of the usage at the airport, which was Tuesday through Saturday were our busiest times. So we've adjusted this agreement to mirror what we are doing, what we as a city was doing when we were operating it.
Good. Okay, thanks. Good.
Now, that doesn't mean that if the FBO's out there working on an airplane, he's still gonna be open, but
Right.
these are his required hours.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Hafley regarding the agreement for the FBO? Is it, it's my suggestion that we hold on to this for another week. Is it,
Yeah.
My other commissioners, or other fellow commissioners, how do you feel about that?
I think that's fine.
That's fine.
All right. So we will hold this over for another week and we will review it on the 15th.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for bringing it to us. All right, that moves us on to the next item on our agenda, which is our comments by our city manager.
Commissioners, I have no comments for you tonight.
All right, that moves us on to reports by our city commissioners. Mayor Pro Tem Crowley,
I have no report. Thank you.
Commissioner Skidmore,
Well, I just want to say I appreciate all the input many people put in for the Veterans Day Parade. It gets better and better every year, it seems like, and I appreciate all the volunteer efforts to decorate our courthouse square as well as our city park. I know that many hours went into that, as well as planning the parade, and so I just want to thank all those involved, and took the grandkids the first time they've been to a parade, a small town parade, and so they certainly enjoyed it, but it was a great event, and thank you to all who contributed toward that.
perfect. Next, that moves us on to reports by the mayor, and I would echo what Commissioner Skidmore had to say. We had some family in from Colorado this weekend, and it was kind of fun to take little ones to the parade, and it was a long parade, but certainly a great parade, so thank you for those who organized that and those who participated. A few things I do want to bring up to commissioners today. The first thing was, of course, to talk about how we would go about filling the seat that is open by, has been opened by Commissioner Jorgensen with the newly elected Commissioner, Commissioner Emily Graves. Do we need to vote on that, City Manager, or I'm sorry, City Attorney Finch?
Madam Mayor, Commissioners, the process would be that you all are voting to fill the unexpired term of Commissioner Jorgensen, which will only run until the second Monday in January when you reorganize. And then at that point, Commissioner-elect Graves would be sworn in for her own right for her term. So you do need to vote to appoint someone to fill the unexpired term of Commissioner Jorgensen, or former Commissioner Jorgensen now. That can be done at any time, and the oath of office can be administered at any time. So
We could certainly do that on Monday.
you can certainly do it on Monday.
Okay, so that we have the oath available.
And just, we have a certain time frame that we have to fill that spot anyway, right?
That's correct. You had 60 days from the announcement of the vacancy, which was October 6th, so you would have until December 6th. But given the earlier conversation, you'll probably want to do something earlier than that.
Sure, thank you.
Great, so that kind of clarifies how it is that we will move forward on seating and filling the unexpired term of Commissioner Jorgensen. We would anticipate motion or a movement on that on the 15th next week. Also want to point out a couple of things that I have been working on with city staff since the beginning of the year. I think that you should look forward to seeing some draft ordinance that would modernize our dog ordinances here in our community, and a conversation that we will start to have here among city commissioners. I also think that commissioners need to be aware that some really high level, when I say high level conversations have started to been having about the future of aquatics in our community. Nothing has happened, nothing is moving, it's just a conversation. So, but conversations are being had. So just know that that is happening in the effort of full disclosure. We have a few announcements. We have, I think we are officially calling a land bank meeting for next Monday, correct, at 3:30? It's not on the announcements, but it is now being announced. Land bank meeting for 3:30 on the 15th. We will have our study session at 4 p.m. on the 15th. On the 17th, we will have our regular meeting now at 7 p.m. And then we will celebrate the Thanksgiving holiday. The 25th and the 26th, the city offices will be closed. Is there anything else to be brought before the city commission today? I don't believe so. We will adjourn today's meeting.